recently I was looking into like reading, like people reading books and literacy rates, things like that. And I happened to find a video where people were talking about it, and I listened to the video, and the first thing that struck me is that they see the literacy and not reading books for pleasure, the decline of that as a problem. Like, it is a problem, but it's really a symptom of a bigger problem. And you can't address that problem unless you're actually looking at the actual more root of that problem. This is like the branches instead of the root. Not even the trunk of the tree. It's like in the tip of the branch of a problem. And it just seems like they were just kind of talking past each other. They didn't really, I'll put a link in the description. I don't know who they are. But it just kind of reminded me that the whole idea is just completely not in people's mind of guarding your autonomy. Because basically what happens is, let's say there's a flood. Let's say there's a flood of water that shows up, and you don't know how to swim. Nobody taught you how to swim. Well, you're going to be flowing with the current and possibly drowned, okay? So, if somebody's like, hey, why isn't that guy breathing? It's like, well, he drowned. Well, why? Why didn't he just breathe? It's like, well, there's a flood came. Well, why did, it just doesn't make any sense. It's like, either you swim or you have some way of getting out of the water, and directing yourself in water. Like, if you're just kind of floating in water, wherever the current just takes you, and when that flood comes, right, you're like floating in water. Let's say you have your flotation device. Well, you're just floating in the water unless you are able to have the power, the energy, and the know-how to go a particular direction, especially if you have to go the opposite of which direction the water flow is, So if you're going the opposite of the flow, then you need to be either a really strong swimmer, or you need to have some kind of, way of doing it, like a boat or something with a motor or whatever, like something that is going to be opposed to the current. So when the flood of information shows up with internet and just the insane amount of not just distraction or attention grabbing or entertainment, whatever it happens to be, there's all kinds of things that are like trying to grab your attention and pull it in that direction. And so when this flood comes and you don't know how to focus your attention on your life and your goals, you're going to be swept away into the current of this flood of distraction, basically. And so nobody prepared, like very few people prepared to guard your focus and guard your mind. People just kind of let it go and just let their mind and their focus be attending to anything that happens to be in front of it, right? And so it's kind of like, just like the flood example, water comes in, it wasn't there before, now it's there, and so therefore you have to figure out a way to manage the situation. If you don't know if you weren't trained to swim before the water shows up, then you're gonna have to figure out something, right? You're gonna have to figure something out. So parents, teachers, mentors, people need to teach other people, younger people, how to guard their focus and time. It's not a matter of like it's a cell phone fault or it's an internet fault. No, it's our own personal responsibility, okay? When the water comes in, there's no like holding the water back, It's like, oh, we're just gonna like close the door and the water won't come in the house or whatever. It's like, no, it's a flood, right? It's gonna be everywhere. So you have to figure out a way to manage it yourself. Each individual person has to figure out a way to guard your focus, guard your time, and guard your autonomy as an individual, Otherwise, you're going to get swept down the river, and you're going to be basically a tool or something that's going to be used to accomplish somebody else's goals, So let's say somebody, the reason why your attention is being grabbed at is because it's profitable monetarily, but it's also people enjoy getting attention themselves, right? So they want to try to, funnel a bunch of attention in their direction because they have this basically free opportunity to do this. And also there is, a profit motive as well to all this as well. So, grabbing your attention, it's like everybody wants your attention. Every news outlet, every TV station, every newspaper, every YouTube channel, every TikTok channel or whatever, like it is everywhere wants your attention. Every advertiser, every company, and they want, now it's even becoming more of an issue, is real-time data. Getting real-time data, where you're at, what you're talking about, your location, who you are, everything about you, your mood, what you're shopping for, what you're not shopping for, what you're, whatever, is real-time data, like what you're doing today, is very important now, because before, if companies or whatever will get a lot of information, they couldn't process it all, Now, with AI, they're able to process huge amounts of information. So now they're like aggressively trying to get that real-time data, like in real time. So that's kind of like a separate issue, but guarding your autonomy, starts with guarding your focus. You have to just stop, have it in your mind that anything that's trying to get your attention, don't focus on it. Go the opposite direction of that. Resist anything that's trying to get your attention. Anytime you are in a situation where you don't have control over what's in front of you, like things pop up and you don't have any control over that, then just don't participate in that. Like TikTok is a perfect example where it's automatically like flips to the next video and stuff, and it's just popping up random stuff and you don't have any control. It's you are basically turning yourself into a chump when you do that. And a person who's just relinquishing their sovereignty as an individual, their autonomy, their everything, and just being a chump for somebody else's goals, and they're going to jangle the keys in front of your face. And if you sit there and participate in that, then you're practicing the wrong thing in your life, right? So the more you practice being a chump for somebody else, it's going to be a big problem long term. First of all, you're foregoing all the things that you could do productive for yourself, right? And your family and everything else. There's so many things to do in life, and there's so many responsibilities that get basically abdicated, just ignored, and that people don't even realize that they're supposed to be doing these things, right? Just like guarding your autonomy and teaching kids how to guard their focus and attention and their time, and allow them to resist the current that they're going to be thrown in. And so there's so many things. There's so many things that you could be doing with your time besides being a chump, right? So when I listen to this video, I'm like, these guys are talking about a problem. It is a problem with people not just basically being apathetic towards reading, and like reading takes time and takes focus, but reading is a self-directed, proactive endeavor, right? Nobody like flips open a book in front of you randomly and you just happen to see the first page that they flip out. You have to choose a book, sit down with it, open it up, and choose to read it, and separate your time and separate your attention and focus on that. So it's a proactive thing. And that's where the problem is that people are not proactive, or they're reactive. They're reacting to whatever's in front of them, and they get accustomed to that, and they normalize that, and it's a severe dysfunction to do that. It's a huge problem, So just the act of reading, sitting down with a book, you're like, hey, I'm making a choice, and I'm excluding everything else, and I'm not being manipulated or being a chump for somebody else's goals, right? Somebody else's vying for my attention or whatever. So I can understand why people are having trouble reading, is because of all these other problems. But it's like, well, but if you don't understand why they're not reading, it's just like, then it's just it's kind of like a waste of time. You focus on the reading part. It's like, well, you have to follow that back and figure out why they're not reading, and why would they read, right? If they think that you're just supposed to just hop in the flow and just go with the flow, then why would you stop that flow to grab a book and separate yourself from the rest of society going down the river and do that, right? It just seems unnatural if you normalize the dysfunction. So yeah, it's a big topic, very complex, but this is probably the most important thing I can think of right now that absolutely nobody's really talking about. I mean, these are smart people, and I try to find other people where it's like, hey, is there anybody addressing this major issue? And I just can't find anybody, so I'm gonna have to talk about it myself, because this to me is the absolute root cause, is not knowing how and not learning how and not understanding that you need to guard your time, guard your focus, guard your attention, and guard your autonomy. It's like you have to actively guard it, right? It's not just a matter of like, well, I'll just turn off the phone or whatever, or like that then you're saying it's just an object that you can have control over, which you don't, because if you don't know the principle, then you're just going to fall for it somewhere else, right? Phone, computer, television, radio, everything. Other people, somebody walks up, sir, your friends, family, everybody has an agenda, right? Like everybody, even dysfunctional, out of control, like interpersonalities can develop and become a problem, like eating disorders and stuff like that. Then it starts nagging on you. Or if you have, like, say, a drug addiction, like you smoke cigarettes or you have nicotine or alcohol or something like that, they develop these personalities within your brain, and they show up and they start driving you and pushing you and shoving you around, and few people can resist those type of things. It's really hard for people to quit smoking or quit alcohol when they're an alcoholic, or eating disorders or whatever. There's massive problems even if you're not even around anybody. You could be in the middle of the woods, right? But the problem, if you don't understand it, you don't know how to actively resist it. And that's the thing, you have to be active. You have to be actively guarding your autonomy as an individual, right? And then if you want to choose to be part of a collective endeavor as an individual, doesn't mean that you can, if you're working collectively, it doesn't mean you can't work collectively, right? You can do that, but you have to be an individual first in order to, the brick that's in the wall has to have the integrity of its own before it can be put in a wall. You just can't have, like, styrofoam and put it in there and rely on the rest of the bricks to hold it up, right? Like, each individual brick has to have the individual integrity, right? So each individual person has to have their own integrity, their own autonomy. And then they can make choices based on their will and not other people's will and everybody else's will, So yeah, like I said, big topic. I made some other videos on this, and I'm going to keep talking about it because it seems like these type of videos get very low views and everything, and a few people, it seems like some people don't even know what I'm talking about, but that's why I need to keep talking about it, so we can maybe kind of break the ice on this topic, because I think it's extremely important.